Accusations of sexual harassment and inappropriate behavior in the workplace are made against an Eau Claire County elected official. District Attorney Gary King is under investigation for sexually harassing female employees, as well as instances of acting erratic in court. WEAU's Carla Rogner is live at the County Government Center with details on the claims made against the DA.
Danielle, an Eau Claire County employee, says she's experienced sexual harassment from District Attorney Gary King since the summer of 2019. And reported instances of inappropriate behavior by Gary King in the workplace continue through as recently as this week. District Attorney Gary King is under the microscope. Documents obtained from the State Department of Administration show Eau Claire County employees told investigators the DA has been sexually harassing female employees since July 2019. In February, a victim filed a complaint with the Eau Claire County Human Resources Department, prompting the launch of a third-party investigation into King's behavior. The woman, who is not identified, says King would make comments about her appearance, asking her not to wear certain outfits because they were too distracting. She says he would tell her things like, "Let's get a room," and ask her about her sex life. According to the investigation, in January, King told the woman he loved her, kissed her, and forced her to sit on his lap. Around that time, a safety plan was put in place in which District Attorney Office employees said they would interrupt if he went into the targeted employee's office and close the door. In mid-February, Sheriff Ron Kramer responded to the courtroom after a bailiff reported King was yelling, sobbing, swearing, and running into things.
I've known Mr. King for ever since he's been here as a district attorney. And to have somebody acting totally out of character is concerning.
Later that month, King was ordered by County Administrator Catherine Schaaf not to have any one-on-one contact with employees. Just this week, Kramer says the DA appeared to pass out during a virtual meeting and tested positive for alcohol use.
As the sheriff, we have a responsibility not only to the public, but to our staff to keep people safe while they're interacting in the courthouse. If there's a medical situation, we certainly would hope that he would address the issue. If it's an alcohol-related issue, the same goes there, that we're hoping that he can get help.
In a statement, King says in part, "In my nearly 3,500 days in the office, I was never, prior to this complaint, made aware of any concerns regarding my conduct. To the contrary, I have received hundreds of examples of feedback over the years from office staff, both written and verbal, regarding the office environment that I promote and my conduct in that environment." In an interview with investigators, King blamed his behavior in court on lack of sleep and grief over the death of an Eau Claire police officer with whom he had worked closely. He denied the allegations of sexual harassment made against him, though the third-party investigator concluded he did make inappropriate comments to women. The State Department of Administration has been made aware of the allegations of sexual harassment and disorderly behavior.
To keep the public safe and to make sure that the employees are safe that work for Eau Claire County. We've done our due diligence, and we're waiting for an answer from the state of Wisconsin to see what actions they'll take.
The decision of whether or not King can keep his job is in the hands of Governor Tony Evers. And Eau Claire County District Attorney Gary King has held this position since 2012, and he's not up for re-election until 2024. Because he is a state employee and elected official, the only way he could be removed from office is by an election or by the governor.
New details about the concerning behavior of Eau Claire District Attorney Gary King. This week, deputies were called to perform a welfare check after King appeared to be intoxicated during a public virtual meeting. The allegations come as King is currently under investigation after employees in the DA's office reported years of harassing behavior. WEAU's Carla Rogner breaks down the latest developments.
Bob, tonight we have copies of complaints filed by 2 former employees of King's office and video from the meeting that led to this week's welfare check. The meeting was held at 7:30 Tuesday morning. In the video, which we received from the Eau Claire County Sheriff's Office, King appears to fall asleep about 30 minutes into the meeting. Captain Dave Rivestall says when he responded to King's office around 10:30, King explained his behavior was due to family matters and trouble sleeping. His office was searched for alcohol, but deputies did not find anything. Later that afternoon, King was scheduled to be in a court hearing. According to a report from the Eau Claire County Sheriff's Office, Judge Michael Shoemaker asked Deputy Chad Strasburg to observe King's behavior. When Strasburg reported smelling an odor from King, Judge Sarah Harless said she would not proceed with the hearing until DA King took a breath test for alcohol. Around 2:45 p.m., he tested positive for having alcohol in his system, and Judge Harless postponed the hearing. The issue of King falling asleep on the job is nothing new, according to two women who once worked in the district attorney's office. That, along with other unprofessional behavior, is described in letters the women sent to Governor Tony Evers asking for King to be removed from office. The first letter comes from former Eau Claire County Assistant District Attorney Laura Lee Clark, who is retired after working as a prosecutor for 33 years. She worked in the Eau Claire DA's office from 2009 through last summer. The second is from Ellen Anderson, who worked in the DA's office with King from 2011 through February of last year. In that time, Anderson says she had concerns of King being under the influence at the office and saw him sleeping in meetings and court proceedings. She claims King would intimidate his staff and act abusive toward them. She writes the district attorney would interfere in cases in which a former colleague acted as defense attorney. Laura Lee Clark described similar behavior, writing she too saw King fall asleep frequently. Clark says King would distract his employees and then criticize them for being unable to complete their work. She says she is, quote, heartsick of the conditions of her former workplace. As we reported yesterday, in March, a third-party investigator concluded King did make inappropriate comments to female staff members after one employee filed a complaint with the Human Resources Department. Sheriff Ron Kramer also responded to a February incident in which King appeared to be intoxicated while at work. At that time, King refused to take an alcohol breath test. King is an elected official and a state employee, so the decision over whether or not he keeps his position falls in the hands of Governor Evers. In order to begin the process to investigate the allegations against King, he needed a letter from an Eau Claire County resident, which he now has thanks to Laura Lee Clark. Next, Evers could appoint a committee to investigate the district attorney, but there's no set timeline for how long that could take. In a statement, the governor's office says it is reviewing the letter to determine next steps. King is not up for re-election until 2024.
Eau Claire County District Attorney Gary King submits a letter of resignation to Governor Evers. It comes amid an ongoing investigation into allegations against him, including sexual harassment and being intoxicated at work. WEAU's Carla Rogner reports what happens next.
Danielle, it's been about 5 months since investigators concluded Eau Claire County DA Gary King made inappropriate comments to his female coworkers. And it's been about 6 months since he was first accused of being intoxicated at the courthouse. Today, King said he would resign from his position effective August 14th. Gary King has been Eau Claire County's district attorney since he was first elected in 2012. But Friday, a proposed timeline was put forth for King to resign. This comes amid an investigation into accusations of sexually harassing female coworkers and being drunk at work. In a letter sent to Governor Evers, King says he chose to step down out of best interest to his office and that it's no longer a productive work environment. He's disputing the claims made against him by two former prosecutors who sent their own letters to Governor Evers, prompting the appointment of a commissioner to investigate the charges against him. That investigation was intended to determine whether there is cause to remove King from office, and it is unclear whether King's resignation means the investigation will continue. It all began in February when a female employee in the DA's office reported King had been sexually harassing her since July of 2019. In March, an internal investigation was launched, and a third-party investigator found King had been making inappropriate comments to his female coworkers. Those findings were forwarded to Governor Evers. Another part of the investigation centers on King allegedly being intoxicated at work. Eau Claire County Sheriff Ron Kramer responded to the courthouse when a bailiff reported King was acting strange. Then in early June, Sheriff Kramer responded to King's office for a second allegation of being intoxicated, and the DA tested positive for having alcohol in his system. King attributed working long hours as a reason for his behavior, and in his statement Friday says he plans to refocus on his health. King's resignation is effective in mid-August. DA Office Manager Eric Hughes says the next month will be spent reassigning King's cases. In his resignation letter, King says he leaves the DA's office in good hands and apologizes for any time his conduct was less than what was expected of him. King's term as DA is not up until 2024. It has not yet been decided if there will be a special election to fill the position or if the governor will appoint a new district attorney. DA King declined an interview.
Two high-profile cases in our area, both involving men in positions of power with recent outcomes that are hard for some to understand and accept. First, allegations of sexual harassment and working while intoxicated for Eau Claire DA Gary King will not face an investigation. One day later, developments in the case against former Altoona School Superintendent Daniel Peggs that tossed out the most serious charges he faced. WEAU's Carla Rogner shares the impact outcomes like these can have on victims. Carla.
Bob, victim advocates tell me as cases involving people in power play out, it can not only affect those directly involved, but also victims of other incidents watching from the sidelines, especially when the consequences are less than what may have been expected. About 5 months after first going to Human Resources, the woman who reported Eau Claire County District Attorney Gary King was sexually harassing her is happy to see him resign. Writing in a statement to WEAU, "I truly do believe that is what is best for all of us involved, himself included. I am ready to move on and continue to do my job." Since King resigned, the governor has decided to halt an investigation into claims King was working under the influence and sexually harassing colleagues. That decision was revealed just before a plea deal was filed in the federal case of former Altoona Superintendent Dan Peggs. In a proposed deal, Peggs will plead guilty to 1 count of possession of child porn. The other charges, including producing child porn and sex trafficking a child, will be dropped.
We've talked a lot about how it is impacting survivors in the area when somebody in a position of power, somebody that is making decisions on other people's lives, has accusations like this against them, what that looks like for the community.
Kenzie B., a human trafficking case manager at the Family Support Center in Chippewa Falls, says outcomes like this can be hard on victims.
I mean, if they have come forward and disclosed their experience to somebody, they're hoping for a result of that, and they're hoping that result is them being heard, acknowledged, and a consequence coming out of it. What that consequence looks like in the eyes of a victim is not the same as what it looks like in a judicial or criminal system.
Another of King's colleagues calls the developments disgusting and unbelievable, writing that especially since it is our jobs to protect victims, sweeping it under the rug because he's running away with his tail tucked between his legs doesn't undo the damage done to the victims and our office. Though the woman who filed the report says she understood how this process would work, she credits support from her coworkers for encouraging her to speak up, writing, "Even in the profession that I have, I still had guilt and doubt that it was something that I did to bring about this behavior. I think these are just natural thoughts and reactions that anyone would have." Kenzie B. says having a support system is essential for victims.
So we talk a lot about what is within our power to control and what is not, and how can we overcome the feelings of not being able to control that part of it.
Especially when the outcome is less than what victims and the community had hoped. The governor's office says because an investigation was intended to determine whether there was just cause to remove King from office, there is no longer statutory authority to continue that process. King will work as DA until his resignation on August 14th. The U.S. Attorney's Office has not yet assigned a sentencing date for Dan Peggs.